Hello, my lovely listeners. I'm Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns. Welcome to this episode of Real Health and Weight Loss. Good morning, gorgeous ones. I have an exciting guest for you, and many of you will have listened to our three-part series where I interviewed the fabulous Belinda Fettke at the end of last year. If you haven't, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that. But we have the most exciting news. She and her wonderful husband, Gary Fettke, are going to be speaking at the Low Carb Roadshow in Tasmania. And it's the first time that Belinda has spoken in front of her home state. So super, super excited about that. And I can't wait to have a chat with you today. Welcome, Belinda.
Thank you so much, Lucy. I can't wait either.
I know. How exciting.
I've spoken in so many places now, certainly a lot online, but I've physically spoken in Spain and in America a couple of times up at the Gold Coast, but this will be the very first time in Tasmania on this topic. I've spoken about other areas that I've been involved with in the past with photography and women's health and things, but this will be the first time I've actually talked about my research. So I'm really excited to share it with people here, and hopefully we get lots of conversation happening from it.
Oh, absolutely. Because the thing that I love about you, Belinda, is that you're looking, like you're not just glossing. Like there's a lot of people that gloss and they'll read a headline or they'll read an article and they sort of gloss, speed read it. And look, I'm guilty of that. I'm very good at speed reading and, but you go right into the detail, and that's where actually the gold is, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Delving deeper and wondering why somebody's written a certain thing or why they haven't. As we had a little chat in our lead up to this conversation, headlines. People see a headline and it screams keto's dangerous, keto's bad, fad diet, it's going to kill you. There's been lots of things. Same with red meat. And I think invariably, when you look at who's authored it or who has contributed to the research, there has been vested interests and religious ideology behind this anti-meat messaging. And it's the same over and over and over. And in my recent post on LinkedIn, I said, it's like whack-a-mole. You just keep whacking down the next headline and whacking down the next one. But for a lot of people, they just see that headline and they accept that. And then they go to their doctors, oh, no, don't want to talk about that. Or somebody might bring it up in the community, or they might hear about, the Low Carb Roadshow that's about to come. And hopefully that they're interested and have an open mind in coming to discuss the concepts, because in some of my research, all the way back to Gene Mayer, he was a professor at Harvard University and he helped organise the very first White House conference on nutrition. I think it was called Hunger, Nutrition and Health. And that was in the 1960s. And he wrote all the way back in 1965 something like, low carb and keto diets are dangerous and will kill you. So it's all the way back from then. And of course, what did the White House Conference on Hunger, Health and Nutrition do? Demonize saturated fats. And this ideology that we've got now that we've had to fight, we've had medical professionals indoctrinated to fear saturated fat from animal proteins. And yet they've been told to embrace trans fats.
Yeah. Margarine. Yeah.
Margarine, heart-healthy margarine. And there's this amazing guy. His name was Fred Kummerow, and he was in America. And in 1957, he first started talking about the dangers of partially hydrogenated artificial trans fats. And it's important to let people know trans fats are saturated in animal proteins and fats too. But they are whole trans fats, not the partially hydrogenated artificial trans fats. So again, it's very different when you start to mix up these slight terms that sound very similar. It's like ketosis for someone can be dangerous, but not nutritional ketosis. So, it's where do you find that little difference? So Fred Kummerow was looking at partially hydrogenated artificial trans fats, and he was the first person. These are really dangerous. Well, of course, he got shut down, didn't he? Because that wasn't the consensus. And the American Heart Foundation, I think, was paid millions and millions of dollars by Crisco, the makers of Crisco, Procter & Gamble. So, of course, they're going to protect that messaging back in the 1950s and 60s. But he kept going And luckily, his university didn't kick him out. They just relegated him to a back room and allowed him to just keep doing his studies. And he presented to the American Medical Association. He tried to get his message out, but he didn't have social media back then. He didn't have an opportunity to tell the public about his findings. And finally, I think he was 99 when he threatened to sue the American government. He said, artificial trans fatty acids are dangerous. And if you don't do something about it, I've spent my entire life trying to highlight it, I'm prepared to give up everything. I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to be dying soon, so I'm going to throw everything at you, and now it's going to become a public case. And of course, America, finally, the government went, okay, we need to look into this. And he was 105 when he died, and he knew that artificial trans fats were going to be banned in America, finally. And I think the World Health Organization said there's something like 23 countries that have banned artificial trans fats now, but not Australia.
No.
Amazing,
isn't it? I know. And even labelling, it wasn't even, you have no idea. Labelling didn't even have a, like, how would people know?
How would they know? Exactly. So, yeah, when you hear these headlines, I think it's always worthwhile. If you haven't got the time and energy to go looking, or you don't have the experience to know, go to a few people like me. And it's not always my work. I share other people's work as well. I just go, this doesn't make sense. So who would have looked into this? It's just worthwhile checking beyond those headlines.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really interesting. We've got the Low Carb Roadshow. We're out there. People who are coming to the Low Carb Roadshow know that we are going to be talking about low carb nutrition. But there are other people and companies, organizations that just call themselves nutrition. For example, there's the doctors.
Doctors for Nutrition, yes.
Yeah, Doctors for Nutrition, which, that sounds good. Like, if you didn't, it sounds like a great idea. Perfect, Doctors for Nutrition, except they're only interested in vegan health. They're not interested in fact, they demonize everything that we're trying to promote. And it's like, I would be much happier if they wrote Doctors for Vegan Nutrition or Doctors for Plant-Based Nutrition. At least be clear in what you're actually advertising.
That, again, it's that transparency that I keep trying to call out as well. If people aren't being transparent about their beliefs or their ideology or their vested interests, being funded or owning shares or whatever else, then how can you trust? I think it's a perceived conflict of interest, even if it isn't a declared conflict of interest.
Yeah. Oh, I know. But, it's so interesting. Even you look at lots of politicians have conflicts of interest that they don't declare. And then even when they're caught out, they sort of, it's like, oh, I had no idea that would be a problem. And it's like, wow, Blind Freddie could have seen that.
And yet my husband, who had no conflict of interest, in fact, would have made more money from operating on people, decided that he wanted to improve health outcomes. He wanted to get joy back into medicine and see people get better. So he started talking about low carb nutrition. In fact, before that, he was talking about just simply reducing sugar. 2011, 2012, he got the idea that sugar was causing harm, firstly to himself and improved his own health, and then to his patients. And Gary, here in northern Tasmania, he was seeing people with the end stage of type 2 diabetes in particular. Some people with type 1 diabetes, but more type 2 diabetes complications that required some sort of debridement or even amputation of their lower leg every single week. And we're only a catchment area of 120,000. We're very, very small. And he just suddenly went, oh my gosh, it's like a tsunami is coming at us. And so when he worked out that sugar acts a little bit like cigarettes, in broad sense, is that it's a vasoconstrictor. So for him operating on an extremity and then it not getting enough blood flow and the nutrients that it needed to heal, he just started talking about it. And in fact, he was so excited, he went to the dietitian's department at his hospital and said, you won't believe all this research I've been uncovering. And he provided them with quite a big folder and said, look at this amazing information. We need to consider how much sugar is being fed to patients in hospital. And at the time, and I think even still now, people with type 2 diabetes get offered 3 desserts per day.
Yeah.
When I was nursing, and we're talking back in the day of the nurses' caps and the dark ages of nursing.
The cape.
When people used to smoke in hospital beds, we actually, even though they were allowed to smoke, we had bed cards that went above their beds saying, this patient has diabetes and needs to be on a low sugar diet.
Yeah.
What happened? That was in the 1980s, and now suddenly they're allowed 3 desserts per day. So Gary spoke to the dietitians, and instead of celebrating and getting excited or even having an academic discussion with him, he got reported to the medical board for stepping outside his scope of practice.
Yes. And look, for people like me and Dr. Mary, we're so incredibly grateful for the work Gary did in fighting that, because it's allowed us to be able to talk about low carb without, being some subversive underground movement.
Exactly. But still, a lot of people that we speak to still have a bit of fear, which you don't need to, because the APRA Medical Board actually wrote that you are not going to be silenced from talking about nutrition. So if anyone else does it, we've got all the documentation to say this is not an issue anymore. But it is interesting how many people still fear it a little bit, and whether that's including animal proteins and fats in the diet, because there's a very strong demonization movement happening. Like you said, Doctors for Nutrition, you've got a group that are actually advocating plants for people and planetary health. But when you dissect all that information, it doesn't align with the messaging that they're promoting. So, but some people are nervous to speak out about it. And I love you guys. That's why I'm so excited to be part of this Low Carb Roadshow, because you are prepared to stand up and you're speaking out, not just for yourselves, but for the health of people. And for our community here in Tasmania, we have a lot of very unwell people. And when you can empower them to take back control of their own health, when they see the health benefits of reducing sugar and including animal proteins and fats, but you don't have to. If you are, I always say that. If you're vegetarian, we supported quite a few people who did really well on a vegetarian diet. I think as a vegan diet, it's much trickier, and you've got to supplement, and it's expensive and it's hard, and you've got to buy processed food in the end often. So, but certainly eating whole foods, seeing people get better, it honestly brings joy back to medicine. And I could see that in Gary. But I also just want to do a little plug here. When we come down to the Low Carb Roadshow in Hobart, when I was a photographer before I started doing my research, I had Gary accompany me on one of my conferences, because I was always accompanying him on his. And so it was actually quite a turnaround for him to come with me. And I got to photograph brides in Santorini. How amazing is that?
Oh, wow. Wow. How beautiful.
But Gary had all day on his own every day for about a week. And so he decided he'd write a book. And he wrote a book on inversion. And it's one man's answer to global health, world peace, all of those things. It's really fascinating. He started inverting, as in lying over the edge of a rock and looking up at the sky and seeing things differently. And he said, it's really incredible when you see leaves from a different perspective, when you see the sky from a different perspective. Things have a different colour and a different light. And so he believes all throughout his medicine, he always looked at the other side of an issue. I'm not just going to trust what I'm told. I'm going to look at it from a different way. And with my photography, bizarrely, when we had to enter photos into competitions and things, we were often told to turn our image upside down. Because when you turn something upside down and you're not seeing it as you would normally see it, that's when you notice elements that might not fit in. So inversion, it just came out of Gary's head. He was just so excited to write it. And he thinks that was sort of his awakening to then understanding more and looking at nutrition in a different way as well. But it's not written about nutrition. It's just written about his thoughts. And yeah, he's quite a philosophical guy, and he's just, yeah.
I love that. It reminds me of that. You've probably seen there's a meme or a picture, and it's a 6, except there's 2 people looking at it at each side. So one person sees a 6 and the other person sees a 9. And when you can see that, there are often multiple ways to look at something, doesn't mean everyone's right or wrong. It just means that we've got to look at all angles and, I guess, try and sort out the evidence or the fact from the fiction.
Absolutely. It's the fact from the fiction, and I think understanding that dietetics. So only recently, as in the last few weeks, did I come across a thesis written by a dietitian in the US. And she's written about the founding of the American Dietetic Association, but from a very different perspective than I've researched the founding of the American Dietetic Association. So a woman who was instrumental in it all and a co-founder of the American Dietetic Association, from which we, the Australian Dietitians Australia, so most of the Western world have followed the guidelines and the rules and rule books from America. So it's fairly important that we understand where this has all evolved from, if you think that how much it's affecting us still. So in 1917, Lena Francis Cooper was the co-founder. And as I've done more and more research over time, I've actually realised she was the very first industry dietitian. She was a protege of John Harvey Kellogg. And if you look at her, so 4 years earlier, she wrote her first major cookbook. And this cookbook, you could only make the recipes if you bought John Harvey Kellogg's inventions. Nuttos, protos, all of the things that he made, you couldn't make the recipes without buying these ingredients. So isn't that fascinating that it was an industry dietitian that founded the American Dietetic Association, which is now called the AND, American Nutrition and Dietetic, or dietitians, I don't know, sorry, the acronym's gone from me, it's AND. And anyway, so you're looking at this group. From this thesis, I found that there were 8 food industries there at the very first meeting. So they decided 2 months earlier that they would break away from home economics and nursing. So they went, we want to create a professional dietetics group and we want to be recognised and registered as dietitians. They had 8 industry people there at the very beginning, and it was founded by an industry dietitian. Is it any wonder that the American Dietetics Association, now called AND, that they not only are sponsored by food and pharmaceutical and biotech and whomever else is in there, but they own shares in food industries.
I know. It blows my mind. It really does blow my mind that...
It blows my mind.
You know, and it was only maybe 2 weeks ago, I had a person who was a dietitian commenting on one of my posts that sugar doesn't cause diabetes. And it's like...
But the thing is, Lucy, that these people have been educated. So in Australia, the Dietitians Australia not only accredit and regulate dietitians, but they educate them. And they are not under the umbrella of APRA, as most medical professionals are, which is incredible. You know, even osteopaths and chiropractors and everyone comes under APRA.
Yeah, I don't know why they're not.
But dietitians were deemed too low a risk to public health in 2010 to warrant the expense to put them under the framework of APRA. But I can't believe that. I think it was because they were so well funded by the food industry that they didn't want that regulation under APRA and they were able to stay separate. So a lot of dietitians wouldn't actually realise how heavily influenced their parent body is. And certainly when I was looking at this group Cyril Fabrecki years ago and found that they were paying the Dietitians Association $23,000 a year. And the wording was to use your members to influence, protect and actively defend not only cereal and grains but sugars messaging. So this is a group of people who may not actually realise, and then they're told by their parent body to hashtag Cyril Fabrecki and say that sugar's okay and all of these things. This is why the dietitians at the hospital, I mean, they were so confronted by Gary talking about this information, and so they reported him.
Yeah. It does totally blow my mind. The heavy promotion still of processed foods by dietitians. And if you challenge them, it's like, well, you know, we're just trying to give people the best options. And it's like, actually, I don't think you are.
No, well, Peter Williams, who was the head of the Australian Dietitians Association for a long time, the DAA, he actually did an article and said sugar's important because that makes a low-fat diet palatable.
Well, look how that's all worked out for us.
Look how that's worked out. Exactly. So let's delve into this at the Low Carb Roadshow. Hopefully people will come along. And, I'm really looking forward to being part of the Hobart show and wish I could come on more of them, but really excited to see what's happening around the place as you delve into all the different interviews and hear different people speaking?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? Like Tassie, I look at Tassie and go, my God, Tassie, we've got like so, there's you, there's obviously Gary, there's Peter Bruckner. Like it's people that have been talking about this for a long time. And I know for lots of things, Tassie's often left off the map,
Yeah.
constantly needing to be reminded, hello, we're part of Australia.
Is it even there?
So,
yes. I know we did pull up the drawbridge when COVID was happening and just isolate ourselves down here and just live.
You and WA, but fair enough. Melbourne was the mecca for COVID. But yeah, so we would love people, local Taswegians to come, but anybody who would like to fly in, because the thing about the Low Carb Roadshow is that we want to make it, our tagline is bringing conferences to the people. We know that the Gold Coast conference is wonderful, it's fantastic, but it's out of reach for some people. And so this has to, we have to try and, bring it to the people. And so, yeah, we would love people to support it.
That sounds perfect. And I can't wait to see everybody and get to talk to them, because that's the great thing about it as well. I love the idea that it's not just presenting and answering some questions, but getting to actually mingle and talk to people as well and have that opportunity. So fantastic work. Thank you, Lucy and Mary.
You're welcome. So gorgeous peeps, if you would love to see Belinda at the Low Carb Roadshow Tasmania, you can go to the link, all the W's, Low Carb Roadshow /Hobart, and the link will be in the show notes. And if you can't remember that, just go Low Carb Roadshow and you'll find it. All right, lovelies, I will see you all next time. Thanks very much, gorgeous Belinda. So happy to have you. So, my lovely listeners, that ends this episode of Real Health and Weight Loss. I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
And I'm Dr. Mary Barson. We're from Real Life Medicine. To contact us, please visit rlmedicine.com.
And until next time, thanks for listening. The information shared on the Real Health and Weight Loss podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only. It is not a substitute, nor is it intended to provide individualised medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor can it be construed as such. Please consult your doctor for any medical concerns.